Hey, gang. Wanted to do a quick rundown of how to set up and draw a 2-point section perspective in fully constructed. So constructed just means that we're going to be doing it by hand. 2-point means there's 2 vanishing points, and for our purposes now, it's a perspective, but very soon we're going to be doing it as a section perspective. Setting up your drawing is one of the, it's one of the most important parts of completing a drawing like this. You want to be very careful with how you do it. For the first day, I would be working on a piece of paper this big, but just so you know, your final work might be 2 or 3 times this size. And in order to complete a drawing like this, you really do want to have a space that you can have lots of room. I would say probably 4 feet wide by 4 feet tall. Let's say like a dining room table is a pretty good place to do it. And you want to be able to have that space to where you don't have to take it off the table for the whole time you're working on it. It is possible to do that, but it's better if you can just leave it on the table. So let's just set up a drawing, and then you can start to see how much space you'd practically need. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to place our plan somewhere up here, and we're just going to tilt it. You can tilt it either way. You can say 30 degrees off to the right, like I've drawn it here. So it's tilting 30 degrees, and then this is 60 degrees. Or you tilt it the other way. So where this is 30 degrees and that's 60 degrees. That's more or less just a convention that we stick with. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to actually draw this line in here. And this line is going to be sort of like parallel to your horizon where you draw your drawing down here. This line is called the picture plane, and it gets a little bit hard to explain, but basically imagine like a big frame with a pane of glass in it, and you're moving it towards you or back from you, and you're going to draw the house that's in the background, right? Like in the distance, you're going to draw that house. The picture plane moves this way, away from you or towards you, and it changes the way that the drawing is rendered. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our station point in here. For now, why don't we just put our station point sort of right here? But keep in mind that we can move our station point anywhere in here. Again, lots of trial and error just to get the drawing sort of like set up in generally the way that you want to set it up. The station point represents more or less where we are standing. It's our eyeballs. So if this is the plan, I can sort of imagine myself approaching this plan and sort of like using those words of attraction, approach, arrival. We might say, you know, this is a really special moment on the approach. Maybe in this plan, there's a pathway that comes out here. And I want to say, I want to be on that pathway. For our purposes, it's just sort of like standing in a field this far away from the building is where we're going to start. So that's 2 sort of vocabulary words, picture plane and station point. Let's get our other 2 vocabulary words. One is vanishing point. And to find the vanishing points, it's really quite simple. We're going to go parallel to our plan. And I know that everybody's plan is not going to be a perfect rectangle, but you will have a sort of like primary grid in your plan. Rotate that 30 degrees and find a parallel line from the station point up to your picture plane. We're going to do the same thing here. Something like this. So don't hold me to it, but this is where our vanishing points are going to be. Before we can really put our vanishing points on a horizon line, we have to draw our horizon line. And that's our fourth sort of vocabulary term. I'm going to put, in fact, before I draw my horizon line, I'm just going to draw my elevation right here. Do these two things need to be at the same scale? You bet they do. This elevation is this side, this face, but I can also go ahead and just put this other elevation in here, the side elevation, if I wanted to. What else can I tell you about that? That's probably a little long, but what else I can tell you is that this can be a section if you so prefer. In fact, it can be really valuable to know where the floor is, where the ceiling is in this building. I'll show you some practice rounds of that. One of the most important things I want to tell you is that you don't have to have your drawing all figured out. You don't have to have your plan all figured out. You don't have to have your section or elevation all figured out to start this. The only pieces of information we're getting from our elevation or section are heights. That's it. The only thing that we're getting from our floor plan are these dots. These like sort of points in space. That's it. And we're going to add those two things together and sort of create this volume. And then from there, we can explore within it, elaborate within it. So let's go ahead and define our horizon line here. You might think it's here, but that's the ground plane. So if you put your horizon line there, it would be like putting your camera on the ground. If a person is this tall, a typical horizon line would be at their eye height. So let's just draw that one in. So that would be a really typical horizon line. I'm just going to put horizon line right there. I'll show you what happens when we move that horizon line, and you'll have time to practice with that as well. To get our vanishing points, it's as simple as coming straight down from where these hit the picture plane and bringing it down to our horizon line. Voila. So now we have vanishing point 2, vanishing point 1. Next, before I move on, you've just set up your drawing. That is a setup drawing. You have all the pieces you need now to start cracking into this thing. So let's do it. The very first piece of the puzzle that we're going to try to put in is always going to be where our plan touches the picture plane. And so we're going to, just for the sake of illustration, we are going to go from the station point to that point, and we're going to come straight down. This is where a drafting table can be a really good idea, so that all these lines are perfectly parallel. Don't be worried about going through this. These are just construction lines. All of these lines are your light lines that you don't need to be ashamed of. When you are ready to put this thing into a frame because it's so beautiful, you're going to love all these little delicate, crisp, light lines that you can't really see from 3 feet, but from 1 foot you can see all of this richness and texture in there. So what do we have? What do we get from that? Well, we know that this front corner in our drawing is here in terms of its sort of left to right orientation. And because it's the only place that hits the picture plane, we know that that's our actual height. So I can pull this across, and I can hopefully be about right. Oh no, hit my fat finger. And so we know that this is where it's located left to right. We know that its actual height is here. So I'm ready actually to draw this in dark. Et voila. Okay, we have the front corner of this building, as seen from this station point. Wait a second and you'll see this gets a lot more clear. Step 2, the next things we're going to find are probably these points over here. We're going to do the exact same function. We're going to go from the station point to this back corner. I'm going to be as precise as possible because these things can get pretty wonky pretty quick. The only difference is, and this is a really important thing that you can get really stumble on, we're not going to take it down from here. We're interested in where the line passes the picture plane. And so instead, we're actually going to bring it down to our horizon from here. Now, the next thing we're going to be trying to find is how tall is that back wall. We know where it exists left to right, but how tall is it? And our answer comes in sort of an intuitive form. We know that we're standing here. We know that we're looking at this and know the height of this, and we're trying to figure out what this one is. We know that that thing's going to be smaller than this one. And so if it's going to be smaller, then it makes a ton of sense that this would come back to this vanishing point. This will become sort of like second nature to you as you practice this. But for right now, we're going back to that vanishing point, and here is our side right there. Let's get this other corner, and then we'll sort of like start to see this thing come to life. We're going to take from our station point to that corner. All that we care about is where it crosses the picture plane. So I'm going to grab this here. Again, I'm doing this all very like quick and easy. When you do this, you're going to have a big T-square, and you're going to make sure these lines are dead on parallel with each other. But now we have this new question. We know where this line is left to right, and we know that it's going to be smaller, but only it's going to recede less, right? Because we're like standing here. We're going to see a lot of this face. Anyway, we know it's going to be smaller. So then we therefore know that it's receding to this vanishing point. Let's put it in here. And here we are. There it is. Now, this thing now looks kind of like a cube, but that's because of where we're standing. We're standing in such a way that this thing is, we're only seeing a small amount of this. If you imagine this as like a shipping container, this whole broad side is sort of just like fading away quickly over here. The other thing that's kind of nice at this point is we're looking at it, and so we can know that this bottom edge is a real line. We can know that this top edge is a real line. This top edge is a real line. Oh boy. And this top edge or this bottom edge is a real line. Okay. So there's our sort of like baseline. Let's do one other thing, and let's just try this one more time down here. But this time we're going to put our elevation here. Get this dog hair off the desk. And instead of putting it at eye level, what happens when we put the horizon line slightly above the plane? Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so now our horizon line is above this. What we've effectively said now is that instead of putting this camera on a tripod at eye level, we're going to lift the camera up. That's what we're doing when we move this horizon line up. Let's just see what it does to the drawing. Again, we start with our station point. Again, we start with the line that touches the picture plane. Again, we bring that straight down ever so carefully. Ever so carefully. Let's try that again, please. With gusto. And we know that this is our actual elevation heights. So we know that this would come to here, and this we bring across to here, and this is now our front edge of our building. This is this front edge. We know this height is exactly the same as our elevation because it's the place touching the picture plane. I'm going to say it one more time. We know this height. This is the only height that we actually know. And we know it to be the actual one-to-one height of the elevation because it's touching the picture plane. All right, carrying on. We're going to go station point to this back corner. It crosses the picture plane right here. I'm actually going to do this way so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Somewhere like that. Great. Now, this is still receding to this same vanishing point, which is here. And by the way, this one is still over here. But now, it's actually going to vanish in this kind of cool way, like this. And as we've just pulled, this is our construction line to represent the back edge. So we know that it's right here. And so we can go ahead and put this piece of the puzzle in. It's right there. Station point up to here. Crosses the picture plane right here. We're going to bring that all the way down. Something like that. We're going to take this front edge back to this vanishing point. Ooh, that was a bad one. Take this edge to the same vanishing point. And this now is our left edge. We can fill in this bottom, this top, this top. Oh, and then we can do one more kind of fun thing is we can find this back corner because we're actually going to see it now. So we can go again, station point. Up to that, we can see that it's just to the left of this other line. Let's see if I can do this. A giant thumb. Not ideal, but good enough. And we now need to figure out where this point is. Instead of thinking about where that point is, think about where this back edge is. And so we know that if we sort of wrapped this corner right here and went around, it's going to get smaller from here. So we can take this corner, connect it to the vanishing point, take this corner, connect it to the vanishing point, and voila, there it is right there. There's that back edge right there. In theory, we could have done it from this corner, wrapping around this corner. It's going to get smaller towards that vanishing point. Let's just test it out. This is where having a drafting table is like really helpful. But you can see we didn't do a terrible job. We did an okay job of getting that about where it is. In fact, I'm going to scoot it down just a little bit. So there's that back edge. We can put on our top plate right here. And we have a sort of cube. It's not actually a cube, it's a rectangular prism. And then if this starts getting a little bit too crazy, all I'm going to do is I'm going to even darken in the lines that I know I can see. They're on the front and on the sides and on the back. And you can see the more sort of lines I draw in here, the more it's becoming clear what's on the front and what's on the back. Okay, that's our most basic sort of form that we could design here. Stepping back for just a moment, we see what happens when we move the horizon line up. Exactly what you would expect. The same thing as if you move this camera up. We're going to start seeing the top of this thing. Let's do one more little tiny exercise. Put a gable on this thing, just like that. From the side elevation, the gable just looks flat. On here, on the plan, that gable is basically going to look like this, right? It's just going to be like right down the center. So the next point that we find is this guy right up here, which is this guy. So let's just go from here to here. And then we care about where it crosses the picture plane, which is here. And we can, this is a big question. Can we take this gable point and translate it right over here and place it on here? The answer is actually no. And the reason is it's not touching the picture plane, if you recall. So how in the world are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by pretending there's like a little glass pane that's rectangular and it's orthogonal to everything else. And when we do that, what we'll do is we'll actually find these 2 points, which just so happen to be on the same lines, because every vertical line is dead on vertical in a drawing like this. And so now all we really need to do, oops, sorry if I blocked it with my melon. We just need to, there's our height. We know that this is the corner of that glass plane on the point where it touches the picture plane. We can bring this back, such as this. Now we know that this is our glass plane right here. And now this becomes simple, where this vanishing point line crosses, that is our peak of our gable. There go 1, and there go 2. And that's sort of it. We can check for this back point and see if it's visible. So let's do that before this drawing gets too messy. It's already starting to do. Where did it cross? Right here. I'm just going to give this like this. Maybe a tiny bit more. And that's really how dark your construction line wants to be, just so you know. So again, I found the center of that thing, but I actually need to find the sort of like pane of glass, the rectangular pane of glass first. So I know I can always retrace this line. I can always figure out which line is actually the center one. But for now, I'm just going to put a little tiny dot on it just to remind myself. It's this guy right there. Now, doing that glass plane is going to be very much the same. We already got, here's one corner of that glass plane. Here's the other corner. We know that it's going to recede to our vanishing point. Well, I drew that in pretty dark, didn't I? And we know that this edge is that back edge. So we can say that this is the corner of that glass plane. We don't have the back wall drawn in here yet, but we could draw it in. It's somewhere in here. So let's just sort of pencil that in so we know what that back wall looks like. I'm going to do that by sort of like wrapping the corner and receding back to this from the left side wall. And I'm just going to double check. It's this line right here. Here's our back corner of our building right there. All right, so if I wanted to, I could say, oh, well, here's the back edge there. Here's the back edge here. I don't really need to do this because I'm just doing that to like visualize this thing. And that actually does help me because now I can say, okay, that's the top corner of this piece of glass. The other corner of that piece of glass is going to come from here. Actually, it's not. It's going to, I think I'd rather take it this way. So I'm going to take the top front corner, bring it back here. This gets a little finicky, but this is our line, and this is our vertical. It's right there. So this is actually our back pane of glass right here. This is a good place to stop and say, draw as big as you can. What I'm doing right here is just meant to as an illustration. But if we can now see that this is our top pane of glass, and we know that this line represents our center of our gable, then when we connect those two sort of corners of the pane of glass and intersect it there, that's our top back corner. Now, I could keep drawing in these little lines of like invisible back corner sort of stuff, but what I'm more interested in is the stuff I can actually see from my vantage point, or I'm sorry, from my station point, which includes the top of the roof, and it includes the back corner of this roof. So I'm just going to draw this in so you can see it a little bit better. Hopefully you can see that okay in this video, but what we're starting to do is some really cool stuff. We first took the most basic form we could ever possibly take, which is this like rectangular prism. And we did that and we're like, yeah, that's amazing, Andrew, thank you so much. And then we added the second most simple thing to add, which is just like this sort of triangle on top. And it got a little funny, it got a little sticky in here because I'm drawing it so tiny. Think about this for a moment. You're drawing at home, this right here might be a 30-inch by 40-inch piece of paper. And so when you're thinking about how much space you need at home, well, you need 40 inches plus however much space you need to put this elevation up on the side. And you need 30 inches plus whatever you need to have not only your plan, but also your station point. So that's why I say getting a 48 by 48 inch area is like critical starting point in terms of how much space you'll use. But I know that this got a little messy in here because we're drawing it so tiny. We're drawing it at, let's call it like 1/40th scale. But it's starting to be kind of cool. Like I couldn't have drawn this from scratch, just like out of my brain. And the more elements you put into this, once we find that there's windows in this elevation that we can also locate on plan, once you find that there's a chimney, a door, that sort of thing, this drawing really comes to life, and it's a really, really fun puzzle to put together. In a similar way that a jigsaw puzzle is sort of like, you start it and you go, are we seriously doing this? I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm part of this family. Toward the middle, you're like, actually, hold on. That's a part of the mountain. And then at the end, you're like, yes, I've conquered it. I am order incarnate. This is a simple exercise that I want you to try on your own. Just do it You can flip this if you want, see what that feels like. You could go with a longer rectangle and plan. Just keep in mind these two must be the same scale. You can change the horizon line. You can change the station point and where that is. I'm gonna put up on online some sort of worksheets that you can test some of these ideas out on as well. Okay, so I hope this is a good place to start. I hope that you don't give up and that you sort of muscle through this part of learning how to set this up. The next phases of this get really, really exciting. So until then, bye-bye.